Hello and welcome to another session of Groundbreakers Live. I'm your host, Javed Mohammed, and I'm very honored to have with us Scott Spendolini, who is our Ace Director. Hello, Scott. And so, Scott, I know you're well immersed in the world of Apex, and I thought we'd kind of get right into the heart of it. How did you become involved with Apex?
That goes way back. You're going to make me feel old here. So I started with the Apex team back in 2002 when I was at Oracle. It was kind of like the team I was on, it was a sales support team, was dissolving, and I had a couple choices. And since I had known those guys for a few years prior, I figured, yeah, why not? Let me do this Apex thing. So moving from sales into development caused like a near meltdown with Oracle HR because people usually go from development to sales. So it was a weird transition. But we started doing demos and building, features and functionality into the product, and it just took off, right? So from 2002 to 2005, I must have done that, upload a spreadsheet, create an app demo a million times, getting people just really excited about the tool. And then in 05, I kind of said, well, let me try the outside a little bit, and jumped and started a company, and really just been building Apex solutions in one way or another since then. So there's very few people I think that have been involved in it this long that have stuck with it. There's some that started with it and have moved on to other things, but there's just a few of us who've really just kind of adopted this thing.
And obviously, I see the passion. What is it you like so much about Apex?
Apex lets you be creative, right? It lets you solve your customers' problems. But what it did is it solves all the hard problems, right? Like security and session state and authentication, pulling data and creating a report. It does all what I used to call the boring stuff, right? And I don't want to resolve the same security problem over and over and over again. I just want to use an Apex component that already solved those problems. So what I get to do, which is a lot of fun, is listen to a customer, figure out what it is they have, which processes that they have that are broken or don't exist or can be optimized. And then Apex really is like a palette, right? I just pull things out and use the different components to put something together that, the best part is when the customer goes, oh, wow, that's exactly what I wanted. Or a recent project we just did, customers said the processes you guys built literally save us a full-time employee a day.
Nice.
So there was one woman whose job it was to hand enter time cards from a number of different construction crews. And with the Apex app we built them, all the time cards get entered on the construction site via an iPad. And they're not going to lay that woman off. She's going to actually go and do her real job, right? So we freed up 8 hours of her time a day so she can go be more customer focused. And that's just, what I love hearing, the stories that I really, do this for.
Okay. So I'm sure over this long period of time, you've figured out a lot of best practices. Is that maybe a couple you could share?
Yeah, so use the built-in stuff as much as you possibly can. That's something you learn early on. I mean, Apex, the upgrade pace has increased a little bit now that they're doing about 2 a year. So if you're more bleeding edge and you're doing a lot of JavaScript stuff or custom libraries, I tend to shy away from that. And I'm not saying never use it, but just the more you keep in the standard built-in components, the more of a supported architecture you're in, which means as upgrades happen, there's a lot less work to do. So yeah, if you use JavaScript, it doesn't mean you're version locked. It just means you have a little bit more work to do when it comes time to upgrading Apex. The other one, and this is just with IT being the way it is and social media, data modeling is so important. I can't emphasize enough how if you spend a few more hours than you think you need with data modeling, what that'll save you down the road. And this is so often ignored because it's not cool, right? It's people are more into the front end and people want to see the flashy, cool technologies, where data modeling is literally drawing squares and connecting them with lines, right? I mean, at the end of the day, here it is, look at this data model. But man, you can't build a good app that's going to be able to scale up and scale out without first taking a step back and thinking about the foundation of that application.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing those. So just as there are probably best practices to emulate, there are probably things to avoid, and then maybe you kind of touched upon that a little bit, but are there any kind of like no-nos you would want to share?
So things to avoid with Apex, I
Uh-huh.
think as people are really starting to adopt it, I mean, it's a low code platform and it's always been a low code platform. Again, you could write a million lines of PL SQL code to really make it work. And customers often do that. But start small, right? Before you get to that point where you're writing lots of code, see what it could do within the confines of the tool. And I think a lot of people will be not just impressed, but really floored by the capability of the platform. I'll never forget back in '03 or '04, one of my earlier Apex stories. I was going through the tool and I couldn't find lists, which is a built-in component of Apex. And I sat there and I wrote this PL SQL package that basically emulated what a list did. And I got all excited and I went over to my boss and I showed him. I said, "Hey, we should really add this to the product. When I click here, it opens a page, but this one remains current." And he just looked at me and said, "Oh, you mean lists?" I was like, "Yeah, we could call it lists. That's a really good name for it." He's like, "No, we have that." And I felt dumb. And they had it, and it was actually better than mine, of course. So the other, make sure you look around and use those built-in components. Don't stray too far from the tool right away. And I tell people that we do training for, within 3 months, anything you could possibly think of, the tool has something that's going to help you with it. If you can't find it, go look for it. And
And even if it's not built into the tool, I think I understand there's a lot of like plugins and things like that that can.
there's quite a few plugins. Apex.world is a great place to start looking for plugins. My caution with plugins is you're literally using strangers code, right? So understand that and be cautious of just building an application that the core is built on a couple plugins from people which you've never met. What could happen and has happened is, as again, Apex upgrades, those plugins could break. And if you're dependent on that system for mission critical processes and it breaks, your only recourse is to hope that that person releases a patch real quickly, or you're faced with kind of rewriting the code for that plugin, which isn't always a simple task.
Mhm. So that's almost like symptomatic of basically open source. Is that correct?
Very, yeah, very similar to open source. But I mean, the bigger open source projects, you could pay for support. There's a couple plugins that do offer paid support, and those I recommend those all the time. But it's the ones that are the one-offs, the ones that people, for whatever reason, they like, and they're well done. And I'm not saying that they're not well done, but all it takes is Apex upgrading a JavaScript library that it requires, and that plugin no longer seeing the right version of the library, and everything can stop working.
All right. Well, Scott, this is an awesome conversation. I'm going to end this with one non-Apex related question. So, Scott, your T-shirt is begging to be asked. What is it about? So, you're going to share that with us?
Sure, sure. Fight finished. It's the Washington Nationals, 2019 World Series champions. We had a really rough year. We started 2019 being down. I think our record at one point was like 19-31, and a lot of people just wrote off the team. The slogan became "Stay in the fight," right? Stay in the fight, and that was the turning point. And they kept winning and winning and winning. Took it all the way, obviously, to the World Series. I was in DC for 21 years, so big fan. Even though I'm in Texas now, still a Nationals fan at heart. And then obviously when they won, the slogan changed, obviously from "Stay in the fight" to "Fight finished."
Cool. All right. Well, Scott, thank you so much for sharing, and
You're
all the
welcome.
best.
Thanks.